The sun blazed down on the sleepy town of Riverside, casting long shadows across its weathered buildings. It was the kind of day that seemed to drag on forever, with the air so heavy and humid that even time itself appeared to slow. At the heart of the town stood the local police station, a modest brick building with peeling paint and an air of neglect. Inside, Officer Grayson sat at his desk, flipping through a newspaper, his feet propped up on the desk as if he owned the place. Grayson was a man who thrived on authority. To him, the badge on his chest was more than a symbol of duty. It was a weapon, a tool to assert dominance over anyone he deemed unworthy of respect. And in his narrow world, that list was long. The creak of the station's front door broke the monotony of Grayson's afternoon. He glanced up lazily, his eyes narrowing as a tall, sharply dressed black man entered. The man walked with an air of quiet confidence, his tailored suit and polished shoes starkly out of place in the dusty little town. A leather briefcase hung at his side, and despite the oppressive heat outside, he seemed completely composed. Grayson straightened in his chair, a smirk curling his lips. "Well, well," he drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "Look what we have here. You lost, buddy?" The man met his gaze without flinching. "I'm here to file some documents," he said, his tone polite but firm. Grayson's smirk deepened. "Documents, huh? For what? This ain't a law firm." Ignoring the sarcasm, the man stepped closer, placing his briefcase on the desk. "These are legal papers," he explained. "They need to be processed immediately." Grayson eyed the briefcase like it was some alien artifact. "Legal papers?" he repeated, feigning confusion. "You sure you've got the right place? Or maybe you're just trying to play dress-up?" The man didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he opened the briefcase and began pulling out neatly organized files. Grayson watched with a mixture of amusement and annoyance as the man laid out the documents. "Impressive," Grayson said sarcastically, reaching out to snatch the papers. He didn't ask for permission, and the man's brief hesitation before letting go didn't go unnoticed. Grayson leaned back in his chair, skimming the pages with exaggerated disinterest. The documents were meticulously prepared, permits, contracts, and transfer papers, all stamped and signed. But Grayson didn't care about their content. What mattered to him was the man standing before him, daring to act like he belonged. "These look mighty official," Grayson said, his smirk widening. "What's a guy like you doing with all this? You some kind of big shot?" The man's expression didn't change. "Those documents are legal and binding. I suggest you treat them with the care they deserve." Grayson let out a bark of laughter. "Care?" he repeated mockingly. "You've got some nerve telling me what to do." Without warning, Grayson grabbed a lighter from his desk drawer. Holding the papers aloft, he flicked the flame to life. "What are you doing?" the man demanded, his voice rising for the first time. Grayson's smirk never wavered. "Just doing a little cleanup," he said, touching the flame to the corner of the papers. The fire spread quickly, devouring the documents as ashes fluttered to the floor. The man stepped forward, his fist clenched. But he stopped himself. His jaw tightened, and his eyes burned with a mixture of anger and restraint. Grayson leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying himself. "There you go," he said, tossing the charred remnants onto the desk. "Problem solved. You can thank me later." For a long moment, the man said nothing. Then, adjusting his tie, he spoke with measured calm. "You've made a serious mistake." Grayson chuckled. "Yeah? What are you going to do about it?" The man's gaze didn't waver. "I'll be back," he said simply. "Make sure you're ready." With that, he turned and walked out of the station, leaving Grayson sitting behind his desk laughing. The rest of the afternoon passed uneventfully, but Grayson couldn't shake a vague sense of unease. Something about the man's calm composure gnawed at him. He dismissed the feeling as paranoia and went about his day, confident that his authority was unshakable. The next morning, Grayson arrived at the station early, striding in with his usual swagger. The station was unusually quiet, and he noticed his colleagues exchanging glances as he walked by. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice tinged with irritation. Before anyone could answer, the front door swung open, and the man from the previous day walked in. This time he wasn't alone. Flanking him were two impeccably dressed lawyers and a stern-looking woman in a tailored suit. Grayson's smirk faltered as he watched the group approach. The man's calm demeanor was unchanged. but there was an unmistakable air of authority about him now. "What's this about?" Grayson demanded, his bravado. The woman stepped forward, her expression icy. "Officer Grayson," she said, her voice clipped and professional. "I'm Karen Elridge, Regional Director of Internal Affairs. We're here to introduce your new station chief." Grayson blinked, his confusion quickly giving way to alarm. "New chief?" he repeated. "What are you talking about?" Karen stepped aside, revealing the man at her side. "Meet Malik Carter," she said, "your new boss." The room fell into stunned silence. Grayson's mouth opened, but no words came out. He stared at Malik, his mind racing. "This has to be some kind of joke," he finally managed to sputter. "It's no joke," Malik said, his voice calm but firm. "I've been appointed to oversee this station as part of an initiative to address ongoing issues of misconduct." Grayson's face turned red. "Misconduct? I've done nothing wrong." Karen raised an eyebrow. "We have multiple complaints about your behavior, Officer Grayson. Consider this your official notice. Effective immediately, you are suspended pending an investigation." Grayson's protests were cut off by Malik's steady gaze. "Accountability," Malik said, "isn't optional. This station will operate with fairness and respect from now on." As Malik turned to address the rest of the staff, Grayson slumped into his chair, his authority crumbling. "Together," Malik said to the room, "we can rebuild trust and create a station that serves the community with integrity. I look forward to working with those who share that vision." Grayson sat frozen, his humiliation complete. Malik Carter wasn't just his boss. He was a force for change, and there was no stopping him. The news of Malik Carter's appointment as the new station chief spread through Riverside like wildfire. The town buzzed with rumors and opinions. Some residents, tired of years of unchecked arrogance and bias within the police force, felt a flicker of hope. Others, including Grayson's circle of loyalists, seethed with anger and disbelief. Malik, however, remained focused. He wasn't here to make friends or enemies. He was here to make a difference. The first few days of Malik's leadership were tense. Grayson, now suspended, refused to leave quietly. He lingered in the town, loudly proclaiming his innocence to anyone who would listen, painting himself as the victim of an unfair system. But Malik paid him no mind. Inside the station, Malik wasted no time. He held meetings with the officers, setting clear expectations and outlining his vision for the department. "Respect, accountability, and fairness," he emphasized during his first address. "These aren't just words. They're principles we will live by. If you can't uphold them, this isn't the place for you." To many, his words felt like a breath of fresh air. Officers who had been silently enduring Grayson's toxic behavior began to feel empowered to speak up. Malik made it clear that complaints would be taken seriously, and everyone, regardless of rank or status, would be treated equally. One of Malik's first orders of business was to review all pending cases and complaints. He was horrified to discover a pattern of negligence and bias under Grayson's watch. Cases involving marginalized members of the community had been dismissed or mishandled, while others were disproportionately harsh. Malik assembled a team to revisit these cases, determined to ensure justice was served. A reckoning for Grayson. Meanwhile, Grayson's situation grew increasingly dire. His suspension wasn't just a formality. Malik and Karen Elridge ensured that the investigation into his misconduct was thorough. Witnesses came forward, recounting instances of Grayson's abuse of power. From racial profiling to unnecessary force, the list of grievances was long. Grayson, once so confident in his untouchable position, now found himself isolated. Even his closest allies within the force began to distance themselves, unwilling to risk their careers for his sake. One afternoon, Grayson stormed into the station uninvited, his face red with anger. "You think you can just come in here and ruin my life?" he barked at Malik, who was in the middle of a meeting. Malik stood calmly, his expression unreadable. "Officer Grayson," he said, his tone even, "you are trespassing. Please leave, or I will have no choice but to call security." "You're destroying everything I've built," Grayson shouted, ignoring the warning. "This town doesn't need you. It needs people like me." Malik took a step closer, his voice dropping to a quiet but firm tone. "What this town needs," he said, is fairness, justice, and accountability. You had the chance to be a part of that, but you chose arrogance and cruelty. Now you're facing the consequences of your actions. Leave this station. Now. Grayson hesitated, his bluster faltering under Malik's steady gaze. Finally, he turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Restoring trust. With Grayson officially removed, Malik focused on healing the fractured relationship between the station and the community. He organized town hall meetings, inviting residents to voice their concerns and share their experiences. These gatherings were often emotional, with citizens recounting years of mistreatment and fear. Malik listened intently, taking notes and promising action. Slowly but surely, the community began to see changes. Officers were retrained on de-escalation techniques and implicit bias. A new complaint system was implemented, allowing citizens to report misconduct anonymously. Malik also started outreach programs, working with local schools and community leaders to rebuild trust. One day during a routine patrol, Malik encountered an elderly black man named Mr. Langston. The man had been one of the loudest critics of the police, but today he approached Malik with a tentative smile. "Chief Carter," Mr. Langston said, tipping his hat, "I didn't think I'd live to see someone like you leading this town station. Thank you for what you're doing." Malik shook the man's hand, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you for trusting me," he replied. "We still have a long way to go, but I promise, we'll get there." A new beginning months passed, and the transformation of the Riverside Police Department became undeniable. The community saw Malik not just as an enforcer of the law, but as a protector and advocate. Crime rates dropped as trust grew, and even the officers who had initially resisted Malik's leadership began to respect his unwavering dedication to justice. As for Grayson, his attempts to fight the investigation failed. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and he was officially dismissed from the force. With his reputation in shambles, he left Riverside quietly, a stark contrast to the loud, arrogant man he once was. One evening, as Malik sat in his office reviewing reports, Karen Elridge stopped by. "You've done an incredible job here," she said, a rare smile softening her stern demeanor. "Riverside is lucky to have you." Malik leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "It wasn't just me," he said. "The people of this town, they wanted change. I just helped them find their voice." Karen nodded. "Still, leadership matters, and you've proven you're the right person for the job." As she left, Malik looked out the window at the town he now called home. The streets were quiet, the setting sun casting a warm glow over the buildings. He knew the work wasn't over. Change was an ongoing process, not a destination. But for the first time in a long while, Riverside felt like it was on the right path. And Malik Carter, the man who had once been underestimated and dismissed, was at the helm, steering it toward a brighter future. The end.